Hello everyone, thank you very much for being here with me. I will try to remake this video that I've screwed it up yesterday. It's lesson 10 from the Spring Security playlist, and I have replaced the initial video with one about the changes in Spring Boot 3. There are a few changes that you cannot see in the first lessons of this playlist, and the reason is we used until now version 2.7 point something. Since last week we have available Spring Boot version 3, and it comes with a few changes above the ones that you have already learned. Of course, what you have already learned is still important, and it's not only in the case of 2.7. I still have a playlist there from 2020, and the reason I still keep it and I don't completely delete it or decommission it is because applications today they tend to have all the possible versions of Spring and Spring Security, and in most cases actually you will still see a lot of applications using Spring and Spring Security in very old versions, like even version 4, maybe even earlier. So all the things that I teach in, for example, the old playlist of Spring Security, they might still be useful for a lot of you. Of course, I will continue updating this channel and the content here, so you will get all the changes. And that's what I'm doing today. I will tell you about the changes that you should know in regards to the Spring Boot 3 upgrade. So again, some of them have been already there described in the first lessons, but you will see today some new, we will demonstrate some new changes that you need to be aware of. So that's basically it. I will actually try to show you, like, apply it in a project, but of course I want to start by telling you that it's essential from my point of view to also read the documentation, and that's why this is the URL to the documentation. I will put it in the comment section of this video as well, and everything that I will teach you you will also find here with nice code snippets. So it's essential from my point of view. Take the documentation and read it. Most of you will not basically learn by heart everything because you don't need it, so always knowing how to find things in the documentation is essential. So let's start our demonstration, and as I was trying to do yesterday, I will start by creating a project. Today I have already indexed the Spring Boot 3 version, so things should go smoother, hopefully. And this is Spring Security 2022 C10, I guess it's course number 10 and example 1. We need to use Java 17, so we were anyway using Java 17 because I always use at least the latest long-term supported in my demonstrations, but now if we are using Spring Boot 3, then Java 17 is the mandatory version. So of course, in case you'd like to upgrade your applications, good news or bad news, you will have to upgrade from Java 8, 11, or whatever you were telling me yesterday that you are using. Some of you, from my point of view, this is mandatory anyway, so you should always consider upgrading your versions of your applications. So next, and we say, yeah, of course we are using Spring Boot 3, and we do use the Spring Web dependency, and we do use Spring Security, and again now hopefully it will get indexed out of the box, since I tried to download it directly yesterday, and we don't have to wait anymore. And yes, I do have a very powerful computer, but it seems that the newer the IntelliJ version is, the more resources it consumes, so it becomes very difficult to have a live event in which I also try to demonstrate things. So I have to make sure that I have some of the things up front from now on, otherwise it will not work. Okay, as I thought, now it happened out of the box. And as you can see here, I'm using version 3, so that's important to see. before to make sure that we have indeed the right versions. We don't have anything else added rather than the security and the web dependency, and of course the test dependencies are added out of the box, but for our current discussion that's less important. So I'm gonna start by creating a demo controller, because we need at least an endpoint to demonstrate things with. So demo controller, and I will annotate it with REST controller, and of course we need at least an endpoint to demonstrate the configurations that we will apply. So let's just create a very small endpoint like this. That should be pretty easy now, and of course the endpoint is less important, because what we need to do today is demonstrate the security configuration. So let me actually add the config folder, and in the config folder add a project config class. And if it's a configuration class, then of course we need to annotate it with @configuration. So of course you already know from the first lessons of this stream, you might already be aware, if this is not the first time you are watching one of the videos of this series, that web configurer adapter it's not used anymore. So web security configurer adapter class is deprecated, and you can see, oh no, this is another one, but I can't even see it, but you trust me, it's deprecated, so you should not use it anymore for demonstrations. Today everything you do as I presented already with security filter chain. And the way you do that, instead of actually extending web security configurer adapter, so that was the previous way you were doing that, now you have a bean of type security filter chain, and you still receive the HTTP security as a parameter. It's taken, it's pre-configured by Spring Boot, so you can directly inject it here. You don't have to do anything special. It will be automatically injected by Spring, and then you say HTTP build, and that's something again you might already know in case you have watched more of the videos of this series. Yeah, it's possible that they have completely removed it, so that's why I don't see it here at all. If you will have 2.7 point something, you will see it deprecated. Anyway, it makes sense. So we already know, again, for many weeks, that we don't use the web security configurer adapter, so that's a point. Now, okay, you have the security filter chain. One of the things that you will observe is that if you try to apply some authorization configuration, you won't have anymore the authorized requests, where you still have it, but it's deprecated. So you can see it's crossed out with a line, and you usually used to use authorized requests and then apply MVC matchers, as I taught you to do, like this. Anyway, ANT matchers or MVC matchers you are using, we don't have them anymore, because anyway we don't use the authorized request. So now what you use is the authorized HTTP request instead, and it's mainly the same thing that you have to do, but you don't have any more MVC matchers or ANT matchers. It was for many years quite a big confusion between MVC matchers and ANT matchers. It started with ANT matchers, and then MVC matchers have been added for Spring MVC, and many people didn't even know the difference between ANT matchers and MVC matchers. In some of the videos on this channel and in my Spring Security in Action first edition, I try to explain the difference between ANT matchers and MVC matchers. Anyway, all that confusion is now ruled out, so you don't have to bother about having MVC and ANT matchers anymore. Now you simply have request matchers, so you just apply the request matchers in the same way, but things of course are much easier because you don't have to bother with multiple methods. So you only have request matchers, and that's it. So that's quite a good improvement. Again, many years ANT matchers versus MVC matchers have been having a problem and created a lot of confusion. So now with finally Spring Security 6, by the way, I forgot to show you maybe in the external library, so you can check that we are now using Spring Boot 3 and Spring Security 6 and Spring 602. So that's why we can use all these changes and they look the way you see them. And it works the same way. So now I can simply just start the application and prove that's working the same way. I don't have a user details service or a password encoder. It's pre-configured. You can still configure it as a bean. It's the same way we already did. Theoretically, you can configure it this way as well, but I don't recommend you do it programmatically this way. I would always rely on the user details service be defined as a bean in the Spring context, because then it facilitates a lot of things, like an easier way to replace them when you need. For example, if you need to inject them somewhere else in the application, or if you need to replace them with a mock in an integration test, then it's much easier to use it if you define it as a bean. So you can programmatically configure the user details service, but I do recommend you use the bean strategy as a replacement. One of the interesting things that you will see is that even some of the methods that you would use to define the authorization rules have been changed. So, for example, the access rule, you were usually going to write something like this if you were using the access method. So it was simply taking a string, defining a string expression language as a parameter, which doesn't work at the moment with the newest version. So this is method now actually requests to have an object as a parameter, an authorization manager as an implementation, which you can see it's defined as a functional interface. So if you can implement your own, you can even define it as a lambda expression. And the only thing is that it takes a supplier of the authentication as a parameter, and it returns the authorization decision, which is actually an object telling Spring Security if it has been or not granted the access. So it's pretty much a boolean in the end wrapped in an object. So pretty simple actually. So the idea is that and of course it takes the object, it takes an object as a parameter if needed. So that's not necessarily the case, but you can do that. You can take the request authorization context if that's needed. So you can see that some implementations have been provided, and one of the implementations where I didn't use all of this until now, so I'm not sure what all these implementations do, because it's only just a few days since this was officially released, so I haven't tried them all. But one of the implementations that you might want to be aware of is the Web Expression Authorization Manager, which is basically the replacement for how the access method used to work. So taking a spell as an example, as a parameter. So you can see the Web Expression Authorization Manager, it actually takes that spell as a parameter. So what you can do if you want to upgrade, say you are using the access method, which is pretty much common. So it's quite it's in quite a lot of places I have seen people using the access manager. You just have to use this class and then you use the spell as a parameter. So it's not that difficult to upgrade because you already have the expression given. So instead of giving the expression directly as a parameter, now you have to wrap it in this object. So the implementation is provided by Spring Security, just that now the access method is more flexible, because you can easier implement programmatic access and you don't have to rely only on Spring expression language. So it was much more difficult with this. What else? So besides that, and besides these changes that we have seen, so remember, authorized HTTP requests, you don't use anymore the authorized request method, request matchers, and we don't have MVC matcher or AND matchers anymore. We do simply use request matchers, and it works. Maybe you wonder, some of you, what happened with the having the slash at the end. So if you will test having the slash at the end, that was one of the differences between AND matchers and MVC matchers. Now they will be simply treated by MVC as two different URLs. So you will have to either rely on without or with a slash at the end, because if you try to have, say, remove the slash at the end and then try to call it with the slash at the end, you will see that the server considers it a different URL. So with that's why request matchers was easier to introduce in the end, because you don't have anyway the difference between these two. And another difference is that enable global method security annotation has been deprecated also. Fortunately, it's only a replacement with enable method security. I will immediately show you how you upgrade this one. For those of you who remember, enable global method security was actually used to enable the pre-authorized, pre-filter, post-authorized, post-filter annotations. And you were able to apply this way authorization rules directly on the method level in any bin in your application. So again, for the moment it still works. I guess it will be very soon removed as well, same as the web security configure adapter, which makes sense. For those of you who remember, we had in enable global method security, we had to enable any of the annotations that we were going to use, and we have three kinds of annotations. So we have the pre-post annotations, which are 4 of them: pre-authorized, post-authorized, pre-filter, and post-filter. And then we have also the secured and the roles allowed annotations, which comes to the JSR 250. So either of these annotations you were using, you had to manually enable what you are going to use. But in most cases, people were only making the pre-post enabled true, because it's very rarely the cases where you are using the secured annotation or the roles allowed. So mostly the secured annotation and the roles allowed, which are very old, introduced in Spring Security, they were introduced for compatibility with Java EE, and it's very rarely, at least in my experience, the applications that really use secured. You can anyway use secured. You can very easily replace it with pre-authorized, so it's just out of the box to replace it with pre-authorized. And roles allowed, again, it's very unlikely that you will find that. I don't think I've ever seen, maybe I've seen one applications in past 10 years or something like that that were using roles allowed. So why should you have to enable global method security pre-post enable true when you can simply have an annotation that is called now enable method security? So this is the replacement, and you don't have to write anything special here, because if you will go inside, you will see that pre-post enable now it's defaulted on true. So it's still, of course, it should be backwards compatible, so it still, of course, support secured enable or JSR 250 in case you need them, but it's very unlikely, again, that you will need them. So they are defaulted to false, but the pre-post is defaulted to true. So now you don't have to enable the pre-post annotations anymore explicitly, because they are already enabled. So you just have to add enable method security, and now this should work out of the box. Now, these are the main things. I told you today this will be a short lesson, so I didn't want to show you many things. I just want to keep you updated with what comes, because from now on, this series, in these episodes, we will use Spring Boot 3. So I want you to know exactly which are the differences. So now, theoretically, if you follow my playlist recorded 2 years ago, you now know all the changes from 2 years ago to version 2.7, and now you know all the changes from 2.7 to 3. So you are able to upgrade your applications. There are not so many changes, but they are breaking changes, which means that you need to, if you want to upgrade, you need to change code, and hopefully you also have some integration tests to check that everything works fine. Like things can happen, and sometimes bugs can be introduced when you change dependencies. I always rely on my integration tests, and they always serve me well with that. Okay, I will just end by telling you again about all the changes that I have presented you are in the documentation, and you will find the link, authorized HTTP requests and all the others, that request matchers, and I have introduced the web expression authorization manager, some more that we have already discussed, the fact that you can create your own authorization manager, and so on and so forth. They are in the documentation, and from now on I will use Spring Boot 3 for all the next examples. So would you consider to make a microservices serious? I consider to do that, but a microservices serious, it's not that easy to make. I mean, microservices, it's a very difficult topic. It's a topic that is not possible even to cover with a book. You have to have a shelf of books to cover. There are so many things in so many ways, and I feel that even if I would try now to cover it, I would have to think very seriously about what kind of examples I put in there, because it's not simply very easy to just discuss about how to create a simple service connecting to a database and exposing some REST endpoints, and that's a microservice. That's the misconception of many, that if you create a simple Spring Boot application, you suddenly have a microservice, but you have to create a lot of things that are very difficult to demonstrate, like a real load balancer, real retry calls, real circuit breaker, a real gateway. Stuff like that is very difficult to prove with examples. They are easy to understand in practice when you have a real system, and real microservices. These systems are usually composed of hundreds of microservices to be really possible to demonstrate all this stuff. So demonstrate it in a theoretical example, very difficult. That's why I didn't have yet the courage to discuss microservices, because I don't feel I can create some reliable examples for that. Cool. So guys, again, short lesson for today. Sorry for not being able to make it yesterday due to some technical difficulties, but finally I have recorded now, and it's here for everyone, and it will stay recorded. If you continue having questions, don't forget, as always, you can write me the questions in the comment section. You can follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we will see each other later for the continuation of this series, where we will from now on use Spring Boot 3 and the latest and greatest Spring Security 6. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm now waving goodbye, and see you next time. Have an excellent time for learning further until then. Cheers.